Hi everyone and welcome to Entry Level 2 English Week 11. Thank you for all your hard work and your homework and organising your video calls, etc. So yeah, we're on week 11, we're getting there now. So this week we are going to be doing some spellings as per usual. Remember, it's the surprise spellings this week. We're going to be looking at some vocabulary around your neighbours and the people who live in your neighbourhood. And then we're going to be looking at communication for making requests or asking to borrow things from people. So how to do that very politely in English, because as you know, we tend to ask for things or make requests in a very polite way in England. So we're going to be looking at some of that, and then we'll be practicing that in our role plays. Okay, so that's what we're doing this week. So we'll start off with the spellings as per usual. So if you've got pen and paper to do your spellings. Okay, so number 1, Tuesday. Tuesday. Monday, Tuesday. How do you spell Tuesday? Number 2, February. How do you spell February? January, February. Number 3, hear. Can you hear that strange noise? Hear. Can you hear that strange noise? To hear. Number 4, write. Can you write your information down on this form, please? Write. Number 5, our. This cat belongs to us. It is our cat. This cat belongs to us. It is our cat. Number 6, 8. There are 8 candles on the cake because she is 8 years old. 8. Number 7, weigh. Can you weigh the ingredients for the cake, please? To weigh, weigh. Can you weigh the ingredients for the cake, please? Number 8, daily. Sometimes I forget what I'm doing. I exercise daily. Daily. Can you spell daily? Number 9, straight. It is a straight road from here to Salisbury. Straight. Number 10, young. My children are still quite young. Can you spell young? Number 11, enough. There is not enough popcorn for everybody. Enough. And number 12, double. The price of that fridge is double the price of the fridge in the sale. Double. Okay. Okay, so if you need to listen again, go back and listen again if you want to listen to those spellings again. Otherwise, have a look at the answers on the board. Okay, so here are the answers on the board for you. So number 1 was Tuesday. Don't forget we need a capital T for Tuesday. Tuesday. Number 2 was February, and don't forget we need a capital F for February. February. Number 3, Hear. Hear. And number 4, write, to write something. Write. Number 5, R as in possession. Our. Number 6, 8. And the number 8, Eight. Number 7, weigh, to weigh something on scales. Weigh. Number 8, daily. Daily. Number 9, straight. Straight. Number 10, young. Young. Number 11, enough. Enough. And number 12, double. Double. So how did you do? What did you get out of 12? Did you do well? Do all right on those? I hope so. So yeah, let me know how you did. Okay. Okay, so this week, like I said, we're going to be looking at language and vocabulary around your neighbourhood. So your neighbourhood is the area where you live. So the area around where you live, that's your neighbourhood. The street or the road, the general area where you live is your neighbourhood. Strange spelling as well, neighbour. It's like way. Nay and way is that EIGH. Neighbour, BOUR, hood, HOOD, neighbourhood. So it's the area where you live. Your neighbour or neighbours are the people or the person that lives next door to you. So we have this expression, they live next door. If you live here, they live next to you, in the next door. And we say they live next door. So I have lovely neighbours. I live next door to Karen, who lives on this side of my house, through there. And on that side, over there, live Nick and Sarah. And they are my next door neighbours, And then, you know, the neighbourhood where I live in is a road, lots of houses and lots of lovely people live on this road. I'm very lucky. I have nice neighbours, very nice neighbours. So who lives next door to you? Who lives next door to you? You may live in a block of flats and you may have somebody who lives above you or below you as well, or next door. But yeah, if you live in a block of flats, you might have, your neighbours might be above you, or they might be below you. So we would still, who lives next door? You would still, who lives in your block, I suppose, in your block of flats. So who lives next door to you? Who lives in your street or road? Sometimes in England it's called a street, sometimes a road. There's usually a street is bigger than a road. So I live in Victoria Road. It's quite a small road. And I'm thinking Castle Road, Castle Street in town. Castle Road is slightly smaller, Castle Street is the bigger road. So usually a street is a bit bigger, but really sometimes street, sometimes road. I don't know why. Sometimes people live in a crescent. A crescent is like a moon shape, half a moon shape, like this shape. Some people live in a crescent. Some people live in a block of flats, so a big block of flats. So who lives in your street? Who lives in your road? Who lives in your block of flats? Who lives in your crescent? Do you know your neighbours? Do you know who your neighbours are? As I said, I know my neighbours. I've got Karen and Nick and Sarah, but I also have other neighbours, other people who live in this road that I know. So Christine and Steve who live down the road. I've got Phil, who lives a little bit further down as well. Helen. Jackie lives over the road. So do you know your neighbours? Do you know who lives next door to you, or who lives above you, or who lives below you? Do you know them at all? And where do you live? Do you live in a flat? Or do you live in a terraced house? So a terraced house is when you have houses all next to each other. Oop. Not very good, is it? This is a terraced house. The houses are all next to each other. Yeah, terraced house. Or do you live in a semi-detached house? So a semi-detached house is when there are two houses and then a gap and another two houses. So there's a gap between every two houses. This is semi-detached because semi means half. So they are half detached. They are attached to only one other property. Then there's a gap and then more property. Detached house is on its own, detached. On its own. So not attached to anybody else's property, just a house on its own. And then we have bungalows as well. Do you know what a bungalow is? A bungalow is a house on its own, like usually detached, but it has no upstairs. It's just one floor. And there's no stairs, there's no upstairs. It's just all on the ground floor. Okay, no stairs, no going up. A bungalow. We have quite a lot of bungalows in England. They're quite popular, especially with older people because they don't want stairs. They don't want to have to go up. So we have quite a lot of bungalows in England. Okay, so what do you live in, and who lives next door to you, and what's your neighbourhood like? Do you live in a nice neighbourhood, a good neighbourhood, a friendly neighbourhood? And who lives in your street or your road or your block of flats? Do you know your neighbours? So that's some of the language around neighbourhoods there. And we're just going to look at some other words as well. Okay, so when we talk about our neighbours, sometimes people have good neighbours and sometimes people have bad neighbours. I've got good neighbours. My neighbours are very friendly. They have lots of positive qualities about them. They're friendly, they're helpful, they're quiet, they're polite, and they're very tidy. So I'm very lucky. I have very good neighbours. Yeah, they have lots of positive qualities. Some people are not so lucky and they have bad neighbours with negative qualities. They might be rude, nosy. Nosy is a strange word. Nosy is somebody who always wants to find out what everybody is doing. Where's she going? What's she doing? What is she? Always trying to, oh, who's that? Who's this? Who's that? Nosy neighbours. Sometimes they can be useful to be nosy because they always know what's happening, but usually you don't want somebody watching you all the time, seeing where you're going, what time you come in, what time you go out. Noisy. So we've got nosy and noisy. Noisy, obviously loud. Playing music really late, playing the telly really loud, parties. Nobody wants those neighbours. And messy, the opposite of tidy. So maybe their garden is messy, maybe the area where they live is just messy. There's mess everywhere, there's rubbish, there's dog poo. They're messy neighbours. So these are negative qualities and these are positive qualities, okay? So like I said, being friendly and helpful, quiet, polite, polite, like yes, please, thank you, and tidy. Their garden looks nice, they mow the lawn, they pick up their rubbish, they put their bins away, that's tidy, and the opposite obviously is messy. So what are your neighbours like? Do they have lots of positive qualities or negative qualities? Or do you have some good neighbours and some bad neighbours? What are your neighbours like? Make sure you've got these words written down and all the words I had before as well, make sure you've got those written down so that you can learn this new language, okay? If we are lucky enough to have good neighbours, and if we're a good neighbour, then we can help our neighbours and they can help us. So my neighbours help me all the time. They're very helpful and I help them too. So our neighbours can do things for us. So maybe if we're on holiday, or if we're away for the weekend, or if we're going away for a long day at work, they can help us and we can help them. So for example, neighbours can do things like put out our bins. Okay, they can put out the bins, can't they? Take the bins out onto the road so that they can be collected. They can feed the cat. Okay, so my neighbour Karen, when I go away for the weekend or for a night, she comes in and she feeds my cat for me, because the cat can go in and out of the house. He has a little cat flap, but he needs feeding. So she comes round and she comes in and she feeds my cat and gives him some attention. They can babysit, or we can babysit for them. If they have young children, we can look after their children. If they want to go to the shops, or if they need to go to the gym and they don't want to take their baby, so they can babysit, or we can babysit for them. I have some friends down the road, and when our children were little, we used to take turns looking after each other's children so that we could go for a run or we could go and do something, and we would look after each other's children. We would babysit. You can walk their dog, or they can walk your dog. So they can take the dog for a walk. Maybe you're away at work all day and the dog needs a walk, so they can take your dog for a walk. They can water your plants, okay? Water your plants. So when I go on holiday, my neighbour Karen and Nick and Sarah, they take turns. They water my garden and water my pots and my plants so they don't all die while I'm on holiday. And I water all of Nick and Sarah's garden and plants for them when they go on holiday. And Karen's too. So we can help each other, can't we? We can help our neighbours and they can help us. So make sure you have put out the bins, feed the cat, babysit, walk the dog, water my plants. These are useful things that we can ask our neighbours for help with, or they can ask us for help with. And we're going to look now at some language around asking politely for people to do this for us, okay? Okay, so when we make requests, when we ask somebody if they can do something for us, in England, we're extremely polite when we do that. In some other cultures and some other countries, they are more direct and they will just ask, can you walk the dog? Can you feed the cat? Yeah, they will just ask and just ask a straight, simple question, which is fine. But in England, we don't tend to do that. We tend to ask in a very polite way and almost an apologetic way, like we're sorry that we're asking this. We don't want to ask you, but we're really sorry we're having to ask you. And when you're interacting with English people, it's really important that you speak in this manner, because otherwise English people get upset. They like people to be super like polite. So we have these expressions. And a good way to maybe ask your neighbours to do something, usually we start with obviously just saying, hi, how are you? And a bit of conversation, some small talk. Hi, how are you? I'm good, thanks. You? Yeah, really good, thanks. Lovely weather, isn't it? Yeah, the weather's great today. So we do a bit of small talk first, just to be polite and to be friendly with our neighbour. And then we use this expression a lot. I was wondering. It means I was thinking, I was wondering. In my head, I was kind of thinking about. I was wondering. And then we have several expressions we can use to ask really politely for people to do things. Would you mind? I was wondering, would you mind? This is a great English expression to ask a request. Would you mind putting out? Now, note that after would you mind, we've got the verb and ing. Would you mind putting out the bins for me tomorrow? Oh, I didn't put a please in. Why have I not put that in? Always a please in English, always. Would you mind putting out the bins for me tomorrow, please? Okay, so this is so polite. We've got, I was wondering, would you mind, and please, all in one sentence. But this is how an English person would come up, would ask this favour. This is how I would ask my neighbour. Even though my neighbour is a really good friend, I would still ask her this really politely, because I'm asking her to do something for me that I'm not giving her money for it. I will probably give her a bottle of wine for it. Usually if somebody in England, if somebody does something for you, like waters your plants or feeds the cat, or if you're away for the weekend, we usually come back with a present, like a bottle of wine or some chocolates or flowers to say thank you for doing that. This is what we would normally do. So I was wondering, would you mind putting out the bins for me, please? Would you mind? Could you possibly, this is another great expression, could you possibly, like if it's not too much trouble, could you possibly walk the dog for me this afternoon? And again, we can use please on the end of there. I don't know why I'm forgetting to put please. I'll just put one on here. I think maybe I couldn't fit it on. So I was wondering, could you possibly walk the dog for me this afternoon, please? Okay, really polite, really nice and friendly and kind. And this expression, could you possibly, or would you mind? We can use both of those after I was wondering. I was wondering, do you think you could water my plants whilst I'm away on holiday, please? Do you think you could water my plants for me whilst I'm away on holiday, please? So again, do you think you could? Could you possibly? Would you mind? And we can use I was wondering in front of all of those. I was wondering, could you? Would you mind? Do you think you could? Okay, these are really, I know they seem crazy because they seem quite a long way to ask a simple question. Like, can you walk the dog? It's a very long way, but in England, this is how people like to be asked, and this is what's expected. So when you ask your neighbours or somebody to do something for you, if you ask for somebody to do something for you, this is a really polite way and the correct way in England for us to ask something that is a favour, it's an extra work for them. So we feel bad, so we have to be really polite. I was wondering, would you mind putting out the bins? I was wondering, would you mind feeding the cat? And we use ing after would you mind, but after could you possibly, just not ing, just the verb, and after do you think you could, just the verb. Okay, but would you mind, we add ing. So that's a really good way. So practice using these and practice usually we have a fairly, I was wondering, would you mind? Like very apologetic, we're sorry that we're asking, we feel bad for asking. So practice that. And we'll obviously practice that when we do our role plays. I'm just going to put some other bits and bobs up on the board. Make sure you've got these written down. Okay, we can also ask our neighbours to borrow something. So to borrow is to take it for a short time and then give back. We're not keeping it, to borrow is to take it for a little bit of time and then give it back to them. So we might need to sometimes borrow something from our neighbour. So for example, again, when you see your neighbour or your friend, you start with a hi, how are you? I'm good, thanks. And you? Yeah, really good, thank you. So we always start with that, to be polite and to be friendly. I was wondering, so I was thinking about, would it be possible, so this is a great expression, would it be possible to borrow your ladder, please? So you know what a ladder is, A ladder, up to the roof, a ladder. I was wondering, would it be possible to borrow your ladder, please? Okay, so you might need to borrow a ladder, maybe you need to get up and clean the windows or something. Want to borrow. I was wondering, could I borrow your lawnmower, please? So lawnmower, to make the grass short. Lawnmower? Maybe you need to Google that word. And we can also borrow money, as long as we obviously have to give it back. So could I borrow £10 to pay the meter, the electricity meter, or to pay the window cleaner? I'll pay you back later. I'll pay you back tonight. If we're borrowing money, we always tell the person when we're going to give it back. We always tell them that. So could I borrow £10? I'll pay you back tonight, or I'll pay you back tomorrow. So yes, sometimes you might just literally have no money on you, have to pay something. So you could maybe ask your neighbour if you could borrow £10. But yeah, you might borrow a ladder, you might borrow a lawnmower, you might borrow a hose to clean your car. You could borrow some butter, milk, sugar. Borrow though is when you give back. Okay, so if you borrow something, you are going to give it back. So if I borrow, a few weeks ago I borrowed some butter from Karen because I was making something and I had no butter and I needed the butter then. So I went and borrowed butter from Karen, and then the next day I gave her back. I went and bought some butter and gave back the butter. I went and bought some new butter for her because I'd borrowed it. Borrow suggests you're going to give back. So again, I was wondering, would it be possible to borrow your ladder, please? So to borrow, look after it's possible to borrow. Could I borrow your lawnmower? Okay, so here just borrow, not to borrow. And could I borrow £10? All right, so again, great expressions to use, really polite, really friendly. And if you're asking your neighbours for anything, this is the kind of language that you would be expecting to use. Lots of pleases, lots of could I, would you mind, is it possible, those kind of expressions. So I want you to practice these, and then we're going to do obviously some role play at our next video call. And your homework, you're going to do some listening about a neighbourhood, listening for keywords and stuff, just to practice some listening skills and some new language, some new vocabulary that we looked at the beginning. And then in our role play, you're going to describe your neighbourhood and your neighbours to me, if you can, if you know them. if you have, good or bad neighbours, what they're like, you're going to tell me a little bit about your neighbourhood. And then we're going to do some requests and borrowing, practicing that speech, okay, in our role play. All right? So lots of practice. Oh, and spellings. Again, it will be mystery spellings. We're just going back over some of the spellings we've already done, okay? So it'll be some mystery spellings. All right. I'll see you soon. Have a great week. Take care. Bye.